The mysterious encounter. Alex had always dreamed of becoming a warrior, a hero who would protect humanity from any danger that might arise. As a young soldier, he had fought in several battles, but nothing could have prepared him for the mission he was about to undertake. The human race had made contact with an alien species, and now, Alex and his team were being sent to a distant planet to explore and establish a peaceful relationship. But this mission would soon turn into something much more dangerous. The ship rumbled as it approached the planet's atmosphere. Through the large windows, Alex could see the strange world below. The planet was covered in vast oceans and towering mountains, with cities glowing in the distance. It looked beautiful, almost peaceful. However, there was something strange about it. The human scouts had reported an unusual energy signal coming from the planet's surface, and that's why they had been sent here. Alex's heart raced as he glanced around at his team. They were all experienced warriors, but this was different. They were entering unknown territory, a place where they could easily become outmatched by alien forces. As the ship landed on the planet's surface, Alex and his team quickly suited up, preparing for whatever lay ahead. When the doors of the ship opened, a strange cold wind greeted them. The air smelled fresh, but it carried an eerie silence. The land outside seemed deserted, with no signs of life. Yet, Alex could feel that something was wrong. It was too quiet, almost like the planet was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The team moved forward, weapons at the ready. The ground beneath their feet was soft, covered in thick grass that swayed in the wind. They walked through a dense forest, the towering trees casting long shadows across their path. Alex's eyes scanned every corner, every dark spot, but he saw nothing unusual. Still, that feeling of unease settled in his chest. Hours passed, and they reached a clearing. Here, the landscape had changed. In the distance, Alex saw the remnants of what appeared to be an alien city. Buildings were toppled, burning wreckage scattered across the land. The once beautiful city had been torn apart, as if a great battle had been fought here. But there were no bodies, no signs of the alien race that was supposed to live here. Just the remains of a war that had been fought long ago, or perhaps more recently. "Stay alert," Alex ordered. "We don't know what happened here." The team spread out, carefully examining the wreckage. Some of the buildings still smoldered, the smoke rising into the sky. But what caught Alex's attention was the strange markings on the ground. It was as though something had dragged along the surface, leaving deep, long grooves in the dirt. "Captain, you need to see this," one of his soldiers, Miller, called out. Alex jogged over to Miller, who was kneeling near one of the markings. Miller pointed to the dirt. "These tracks, they look fresh." Alex crouched beside him. The markings seemed to lead deeper into the forest, toward a dark, shadowy area. He could feel a chill run down his spine as he stared into the woods. Something was out there. But what? The alien race they had encountered was technologically advanced, so why would they leave their planet in ruins? "Let's move," Alex said, standing up. "We need to find out what happened here." As they followed the trail, the silence grew more oppressive. The trees seemed to close in around them, and the path became harder to navigate. The air was thick with tension, every step taken with caution. They moved like shadows, trying not to make a sound, knowing that any noise could alert whatever was lurking nearby. Suddenly, a sharp noise broke the silence, something moving through the trees. Alex's hand shot to his weapon, his eyes scanning the dark woods. The rest of the team followed suit, weapons raised, ready for whatever was coming. And then, from the shadows, a figure appeared. It was tall and cloaked in darkness, moving with unnatural speed. It was humanoid, but the features were difficult to make out in the dim light. Its movements were fluid, almost like a predator stalking its prey. "Hold your fire," Alex whispered urgently. "Stay calm." The figure stopped just beyond the clearing. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He knew this was no ordinary alien. The figure was different, stronger, faster, more skilled than anything they had encountered before. It seemed to be studying them, as if deciding what to do next. Then, without warning, the alien lunged forward. The team opened fire, but the alien was too fast. It dodged every shot with ease, moving like a shadow. Alex barely had time to react as the alien grabbed one of his soldiers and knocked him aside like a ragdoll. "Get back," Alex shouted. "Regroup." The team scrambled, but the alien warrior was relentless. It was clear now that this was no ordinary enemy. It was a force of nature. But why was it attacking? And why did it seem so familiar? Alex's mind raced. Was this alien the reason for the destruction? Or was it something more? He had no answers, only questions. And as the alien warrior took a step closer, Alex realized that this encounter was just the beginning of something much bigger and much more dangerous. Unexpected alliance. The alien warrior stood still for a moment, his glowing eyes locked onto Alex's. The air between them crackled with tension. The team's weapons were raised, but Alex could see the uncertainty in their eyes. This alien wasn't like the others they had encountered in their earlier missions. It wasn't attacking recklessly, but it was clearly no friend. And yet there was something in its movements, something calculated and purposeful, that made Alex pause. Without warning, the alien warrior spoke. His voice was deep, a low growl that rumbled in the air, but the words were unfamiliar. The language was unlike anything Alex had ever heard, sharp and alien, yet there was a rhythm to it that felt oddly familiar. The words didn't make sense, but Alex could feel the weight behind them. "Captain, what do we do?" Miller whispered, his voice tense. The rest of the team looked to Alex, waiting for direction. Before Alex could respond, the alien warrior did something unexpected. He lowered his weapon and extended a hand toward them, a gesture that was strangely peaceful. For a moment, Alex couldn't move. Was this a trick? Was the alien trying to get them to lower their guard before attacking? But then something strange happened. The air around them seemed to shift, the tension evaporating like a storm passing. The alien's eyes softened, and Alex felt an odd sense of calm wash over him, as if the alien was trying to communicate something far beyond their current situation. It wasn't a language of words, but one of intent. "I don't think it wants to fight," Alex said quietly, his voice steady despite the confusion in his mind. The alien's eyes flickered, as if recognizing that Alex understood something important. It moved closer, cautiously, but without hostility, and to Alex's surprise, it dropped its weapon to the ground. The warrior turned his back for just a moment, and Alex watched in silence, trying to read the alien's next move. The moment of peace didn't last long. A crackling noise broke through the stillness. Suddenly, a group of heavily armed aliens appeared from the shadows of the forest, their eyes glowing with a dangerous light. They were different from the warrior that had approached Alex. Their armor was dark and jagged, their weapons sleek and menacing. The atmosphere shifted again, this time with unmistakable hostility. These new aliens were not here to talk. "Stay alert," Alex shouted as he drew his weapon. The first warrior, the one that had shown them peace, turned swiftly, stepping between Alex and the new alien group. The calm expression that had once been on his face now hardened into something fierce. His posture shifted, ready for a fight. One of the new aliens growled in the same alien language, their words harsh and filled with malice. They raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the first warrior's hand shot out, and with a single, quick motion, he disarmed the closest enemy. His movements were fluid, graceful, and incredibly fast. Too fast for Alex to even fully comprehend. The enemy group hesitated, confused by the sudden turn of events. The first warrior gave Alex a sharp look, his eyes flashing with urgency. Without speaking a word, he motioned for Alex and his team to follow him. "Move now," Alex ordered. The team sprinted behind the warrior. and they didn't look back. The ground beneath their feet was uneven as they dashed through the forest, the sound of enemy footsteps echoing behind them. The alien warrior led them with remarkable precision, ducking and weaving through the dense trees, moving as if he knew the forest better than anyone. They reached a small, hidden clearing where the alien warrior finally stopped. He turned to face them, his face unreadable. "Why are you helping us?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline in his veins. The alien warrior's gaze softened again. He didn't speak, but his actions spoke louder than words ever could. He removed a small device from his belt, a communication tool, and held it out. Alex hesitated but took it from him. It wasn't just a translator. It was something more, something that could bridge the gap between the humans and the alien species. Through the device, the warrior's voice came through, clearer this time, in a language Alex could understand. "I am Karish," the alien said, his voice calm but firm. "I am of the Erythari people. We are not all enemies here." Alex's mind raced. Erythari. He had heard the name in passing, but never thought he would encounter them. The Erythari were an ancient race of warriors, known for their honor and their strength. They had been allies to some, but enemies to others. What Karish was saying didn't add up. Why was he alone? Why was he protecting them? "We were once allies, your people and mine," Karish continued, "but betrayal has torn us apart. Now, a new threat looms, one that could destroy both our peoples." Alex's confusion deepened. What new threat? Who's attacking? Karish's eyes flickered with something dark, something fierce. The Zathric, a race of conquerors. They are relentless, and they seek to destroy us all. The word Zathric hit Alex like a punch to the stomach. The Zathric were notorious for their brutal conquests. A race of monsters who cared for nothing but expansion, leaving devastation in their wake. "We must unite," Karish said, his voice urgent. "Your people and mine. Together, we can fight them. But alone, we will fall." The weight of Karish's words hung in the air. The decision was heavy, the stakes higher than ever. But what choice did they have? "All right," Alex said, his voice firm. "We'll fight with you, but if you betray us..." Karish nodded solemnly, his expression unwavering. "I will not betray you." The fate of both their peoples now rested in the hands of an unlikely alliance. A human warrior and an alien. Together, they would stand against the Zathric, or risk losing everything. The hidden enemy. The uneasy alliance between Alex's team and Karish was formed out of necessity. Both sides understood that without unity, they would be powerless against the new enemy that loomed over them. The Zathric were unlike anything Alex had ever encountered. They weren't just invaders. They were predators, and their sole purpose was conquest. Now, both humans and Erythari were caught in the eye of their storm, and survival would require more than just weapons. It would require trust. The team made their way deeper into the planet's abandoned cities, hoping to find more clues about the Zathric's intentions. The ruins were eerily quiet, but the air felt charged, as if something unseen was watching them. Alex felt it in his bones. There was danger close by, and yet the city seemed deserted. The once vibrant streets were now littered with debris, burnt structures, and abandoned vehicles scattered about. It was clear that the Zathric had been here, but what had they done to the alien civilizations before? As they moved cautiously through the city, Karish stopped in front of a large damaged building. He pointed to the doorway with his weapon, signaling that they should enter. Alex raised an eyebrow, but nodded, signaling to his team to follow. They stepped into the building, which was dark and filled with strange, glowing symbols etched into the walls. Alex could feel the weight of ancient history in the air. This wasn't just a city, it was a place of knowledge, a library of sorts. Karish moved to one of the walls, brushing his hand across the symbols, muttering to himself in his native tongue. For a moment, there was nothing, and then a soft click echoed through the room. A hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow corridor that led deeper into the heart of the building. "This is where the Erythari kept their most important secrets," Karish explained in a low voice. "The Zathric will stop at nothing to gain control of this place. But they don't know everything yet." Alex's curiosity piqued. "What's so important here?" Karish looked over his shoulder, his eyes grim. "The Erythari kept hidden knowledge of the Zathric's true weakness. The key to stopping them is here." Alex's mind raced. He had heard of such artifacts, hidden deep within the ruins of lost civilizations, objects that held the power to turn the tide of entire wars. If this was truly what Karish claimed, it could be their only hope. The team followed Karish down the dark corridor, the air thick with anticipation. The further they went, the colder it became, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't just the silent eeriness of the abandoned city. It was something else, something more sinister. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind them, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. The team froze. Alex's hand immediately went to his weapon. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. It wasn't just one Zathric. It was a whole battalion. "Run!" Karish shouted, turning toward the team. "They're here." They didn't need to be told twice. The team sprinted down the corridor, the heavy footsteps of their pursuers echoing in pursuit. The Zathric were relentless, their pace unyielding, as if they could sense the urgency in the air. They were close, and there was no time to lose. Alex's heart raced as they neared the end of the corridor. They were so close to whatever secret lay hidden within the walls, but the Zathric were right behind them. As they reached the end of the tunnel, Karish grabbed a large glowing crystal from the wall and thrust it into Alex's hands. "Take it," Karish ordered, his voice desperate. "This is the key. Don't let them get it." Alex barely had time to process the words before the Zathric were upon them. The massive alien warriors emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing a menacing red. They were huge, towering over Alex and his team, their weapons crackling with energy. "Prepare to fight," Alex ordered, raising his weapon. "We won't let them have it." The battle was brutal. The Zathric charged, their weapons firing blasts of energy that sent the team scrambling for cover. Alex and his team fought back, using everything they had learned in their training, but the Zathric were too strong. Karish fought alongside them, moving with terrifying speed and precision, but even he couldn't stop the oncoming tide of enemies. Then, in the middle of the chaos, something strange happened. The Zathric halted. All at once, they stopped their assault and looked to each other in confusion. Alex felt the shift in the air, a sudden calm amidst the violence. Karish's eyes widened as he saw the change. They know about the crystal," he murmured, a look of dread creeping onto his face. "They are not here just to kill us. They are here for the knowledge." A cold realization swept over Alex. The Zathric weren't just attacking to conquer. They were after the secrets of the Erythari, the hidden knowledge that Karish had spoken of. The key to their defeat was the one thing they couldn't allow to fall into the wrong hands. The ground beneath them began to shake. A rumbling noise echoed through the building, and the lights flickered. It was as if the entire planet was responding to the presence of the crystal. "We need to leave," Karish said urgently. "They've already activated the alarm. More are coming." Alex's mind raced. They had no choice but to escape, but with the Zathric closing in, it was clear they couldn't leave the building without a fight. The stakes had just been raised. The team had the key to defeating the Zathric, but in the process, they had unleashed something far worse than they had imagined. The Zathric weren't just fighting for territory. They were fighting for their survival, training for battle. The night was heavy with tension as Alex and his team gathered around a makeshift campfire, their faces illuminated by the dim light. The alien artifact, the glowing crystal that had been ripped from the Erythari ruins, lay in the center of their encampment, still emitting a soft hum of energy. It was both a beacon of hope and a symbol of their newfound responsibility. The Zathric weren't just after it for its power. They were after it to destroy everything the humans and Erythari had fought to protect. But now, it was in their hands, and with it, the fate of two species hung in the balance. Tomorrow, Karish spoke, his voice low, we begin training. The Zathric are not like any enemy you've faced before. They fight with precision, with purpose. You will need more than just weapons to defeat them. Alex looked at the alien warrior with skepticism. Despite their alliance, the reality of the situation had yet to sink in. He had fought many battles before, but this felt different. The stakes were higher, the risks greater. Karish wasn't just offering knowledge, he was offering survival. The Zathric were relentless. If they couldn't adapt, they would be wiped out, along with any hope for peace between humans and aliens. The morning arrived, and with it came the harsh reality of Karish's training. The Erythari warrior had transformed their small camp into a training ground, using the alien landscape to their advantage. Karish was no longer the quiet ally he had been when they first met. He was a commander, and under his guidance, Alex's team was pushed to their limits. The training began with physical conditioning, testing the team's endurance and speed. Alex had expected drills with weapons, but instead, Karish had them running through the dense, alien forests, climbing trees, and navigating terrain that felt like it was actively fighting back. The foliage was thick and unpredictable, and Alex found himself tangled in vines and slipping on the uneven ground. Every misstep felt like it would cost him. You will need to be faster than the Zathric, Karish shouted as Alex struggled to regain his footing. You cannot rely on strength alone. Speed and strategy will be your greatest allies. By midday, the team was exhausted, but Karish wasn't finished. He had them sparring with alien-style weapons, thin, energy-infused blades that hummed with power. The alien technology felt foreign, and the weight of the weapons was unlike anything Alex had ever handled. It was difficult to adjust, and as they fought against Karish's swift movements, they felt completely outmatched. Alex's arm burned with fatigue after a few rounds. His mind was filled with doubts. Could they really become strong enough in such a short time to face the Zathric? Each of his teammates was struggling in their own way, but they were trying to push through, to fight as Karish demanded. Karish, however, was relentless. He moved with the grace of a predator, his blade flashing in the air, always one step ahead. Alex and his team were no match for him. The alien warrior could disarm them effortlessly, his strikes coming so fast they barely had time to react. But Karish wasn't doing it to humiliate them. He was teaching them to think faster, to anticipate their enemy's every move. By the end of the day, the team was bruised, battered, and covered in sweat. Alex's muscles ached, and his mind felt like it was about to shut down. He sat down on a nearby rock, catching his breath. He had never experienced a training regimen like this before. You are learning, Karish said as he walked past, his eyes scanning the exhausted group. But you are not yet ready. The Zathric will test your limits. They will test your will to survive. Karish's words echoed in Alex's mind long after he had left to rest. It wasn't just about surviving the battle. It was about surviving the enemy's mind games. The Zathric wouldn't just fight them physically. They would try to break them down mentally. This was more than just strength. It was about endurance and resilience. Over the next few days, the training became even more intense. Karish had them practicing in simulated environments, creating scenarios that forced Alex and his team to think like the Zathric, always staying a step ahead, always calculating the next move. They were taught how to read the terrain, how to use the environment to their advantage, how to fight in complete darkness, and how to stay hidden when there was no cover. The Zathric were masters of ambush and surprise attacks, and if they were going to survive, the humans needed to become the same. Alex found himself slowly adjusting to the alien training methods, though it didn't come easy. He had always relied on his instincts and brute strength in the past, but now he was learning to think more like Karish, more strategically. They trained with the Erythrae's advanced technology, learning how to wield weapons that were both unfamiliar and dangerous. But it wasn't just the weapons that changed them. It was the mindset. One night, after another grueling training session, Alex sat alone by the fire, staring into the flickering flames. He couldn't sleep. His mind was buzzing with questions. Were they really becoming strong enough to fight the Zathric? Could Karish's lessons make a difference? They were still just humans, against an alien force that had wiped out entire civilizations. The weight of the responsibility felt heavier each day. Just then, Karish appeared beside him, silent as ever. "You are struggling," Karish said, as if reading his mind. "You doubt yourself. Doubt is the enemy." Alex didn't reply immediately, instead watching the fire as the flames crackled and popped. "I don't know if we can do this," Alex said softly. "The Zathric are unlike anything we've ever faced. What if we fail?" Karish's eyes gleamed in the firelight. "Failure is only the end if you choose to accept it. You and your team have the strength within you, but you must learn to trust one another. Together, you can achieve what you cannot alone." Alex nodded, though his doubts lingered. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew one thing for certain. The battle ahead was unlike anything they had faced before, and the time for doubts was running out. Tomorrow would bring another day of training, but Alex could feel it in his bones. Soon, the real test would begin. The first major battle. The air was thick with anticipation as Alex stood at the front of his team, looking out over the vast alien landscape. The battle was coming, and there was no turning back now. For days, they had trained under Karish's grueling regimen, preparing for the Zathric, the unstoppable force that had already torn through entire worlds. The time had come to face them, to prove that the alliance between humans and Erythrae was more than just a desperate hope. It had to be a victory. The plan was simple, yet dangerous. They would lead a diversionary strike against one of the Zathric's forward bases, an outpost that had been harassing both human and Erythrae territories. The base was heavily guarded, and its defenses were formidable, but the goal wasn't to destroy the entire outpost. No, it was far more calculated. They needed to draw out the enemy's main force, weaken them just enough for a surprise counterattack that could shift the balance of power. Alex's eyes scanned the horizon as Karish stepped beside him, his expression unreadable. "Do not underestimate them," Karish said quietly. "They are more than soldiers. They are hunters, born to track and kill." Alex nodded, tightening his grip on his weapon. It felt heavier today, heavier with the weight of everything that was at stake. The team had grown stronger, no doubt, but none of them had faced an enemy like the Zathric. They were ruthless, and every fight could be their last. The countdown had begun. A low rumble filled the air as the team boarded their transport ships, each one carrying the human and Erythrae warriors in tense silence. Alex's stomach churned. He could feel the tension in his bones, the unknown ahead making his heart race. This wasn't just about strategy or weapons. This was about survival, about proving that they could stand up to the nightmare that the Zathric represented. As the transport ships soared through the sky, Alex's mind raced. He thought about his team. Each of them had their own fears, their own doubts, but they had all agreed to this. They had to. Failure wasn't an option. They had to show the Zathric that the alliance was real, that they would fight for their survival, no matter what. The landing zone came into view. The enemy base stretched across the landscape like a fortress, its walls built from blackened metal that seemed to absorb the light. The air buzzed with the sound of distant weaponry, the occasional burst of energy blasts lighting up the sky. "Ready yourselves," Karish ordered, his voice steady but laced with the urgency of the moment. Alex's team disembarked first, spreading out to cover their designated positions. The plan was set in motion, and every member of the team knew their role. There would be no second chances. They moved quickly, slipping through the shadows, their hearts pounding as they prepared to engage the Zathric. A sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath them, and the first wave of Zathric soldiers appeared from behind the base's outer walls. Their weapons crackled with violent energy, their monstrous forms towering over the battlefield. The Zathric were not just warriors. They were a living force of nature, a brutal and calculated breed born for destruction. "Engage!" Alex shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The battle erupted instantly. Energy blasts filled the air, lighting up the dark sky with flashes of bright blue and red. Alex moved with his team, taking cover behind the jagged rock formations near the base. They fired back at the oncoming Zathric, their weapons barely able to hold their ground against the sheer power of the enemy's fire. Karish was a blur of motion, his alien blade cutting through Zathric soldiers with precision and speed. He moved like a force of nature, his glowing weapon flashing as it cleaved through the enemy with an eerie silence. Alex watched in awe, knowing that without Karish, they would have been overrun in moments. But even with the element of surprise on their side, the Zathric were relentless. For every soldier Alex's team took down, 2 more took their place. The Zathric pushed forward, their savage attacks pushing the humans and Erithari back. The battle quickly became a deadly game of attrition, each side suffering heavy casualties. But Alex wasn't about to give up. "Hold the line!" Alex shouted as he fired again, his team rallying behind him. Through the chaos, Alex saw something he hadn't expected. A Zathric leader, different from the others. This one was much larger, more imposing, with a dark, armored exoskeleton, and a weapon that seemed to pulse with dark energy. It was as though the Zathric had brought their finest to crush them. This leader wasn't just a soldier, it was a commander, and it was coming straight for them. Karish saw it too, his eyes narrowing in recognition. "That's Zithar, the Zathric general," Karish hissed under his breath. "He will not stop until we are all dead." Alex's heart raced. They had no choice now. The general's presence meant that the battle was about to escalate to its final stages. It was do or die. "Alex with me," Karish called out, already moving toward the Zathric general. The 2 of them charged, running through the battlefield with a precision born from Karish's training. The Zathric general saw them coming and unleashed a blast of energy that sent Alex tumbling to the ground. The force was overwhelming, but Alex wasn't done yet. With the strength of his human resolve, he picked himself up, eyes locked on Zithar. This was the moment. This was where they could turn the tide of the war. The general roared, raising his massive weapon high. Karish was already in motion, his blade cutting through the air with an unearthly speed. Alex was right behind him, fighting through the pain in his body as they closed the distance to the general. The final clash was brutal. Zithar's weapon crackled with destructive energy as it clashed against Karish's glowing blade. Sparks flew, and the ground trembled under the force of their blows. Alex's heart pounded as he fired at the general's exposed flank, providing cover for Karish. Together, they made their move, striking in unison. In one final, desperate blow, Karish's blade sliced through the Zathric general's defense, cutting deep into its armor. Zithar roared in pain, but before it could retaliate, Alex's shot landed, hitting the exposed weak point in the general's armor. With a final screech, Zithar collapsed, the ground shaking as it fell. The battlefield fell silent for a moment, the sudden stillness almost as terrifying as the violence that had preceded it. The Zathric soldiers hesitated, their morale shattered. Without their general, they were nothing more than a disorganized force. Alex turned to Karish, who nodded solemnly. They had done it. They had struck a blow that could change everything. But as Alex looked around at the fallen comrades, the weight of their victory settled on him. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The ultimate test. The victory had come at a great cost. The battlefield was littered with the fallen, both human and Erithari warriors. Alex's ears rang with the aftermath of the battle, the silence a sharp contrast to the chaos they had just endured. The Zathric forces had retreated, but the victory felt hollow. Their general, Zithar, had been struck down, but the Zathric were not known for surrendering easily. This was just the beginning. Alex stood over the body of a fallen teammate, his heart heavy with grief. Every life lost in this war weighed on him, but today it felt different. They had been in the fight for survival, but now it was clear. To truly win, they had to go beyond just surviving. They had to outsmart the Zathric, find their weakness, and strike with a precision they had never thought possible. "Captain, we need to move." Karish's voice cut through the fog of Alex's thoughts. The alien warrior stood nearby, his posture rigid, his eyes scanning the horizon. "The Zathric will regroup. We've bought them time, but it won't last." Alex nodded, snapping out of his trance. There was no time to mourn. At least, not now. They had to push forward. They had to prepare for the next phase of the war, and this time, it would be even more dangerous than before. As they moved out of the battlefield, Karish led them to a hidden outpost deep within the alien wilderness. The place was isolated, far from any known Zathric settlements. It had been used by the Erithari as a last bastion during their earlier wars, a place where they could regroup and recover. The outpost was well defended, but it would not be enough for long. "We can rest here," Karish said, his voice more solemn than Alex had ever heard it. "But we must prepare. Zathric reinforcements are coming." The team began to fortify the outpost, setting up barricades and reinforcing their defenses. Despite their exhaustion, they worked quickly, knowing that every moment counted. Alex and Karish spent hours strategizing, reviewing intel on the Zathric's movements, and analyzing the terrain. But every plan seemed to circle back to the same problem. The Zathric were too numerous, too strong, and they had no clear way to defeat them for good. In the quiet of the night, as the team gathered around a flickering fire, Karish turned to Alex. "There is one way," Karish said quietly, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "But it is dangerous. It may cost us everything." Alex's gaze fixed on the alien. "What do you mean?" Karish's eyes locked onto the fire, his face a mask of uncertainty. "The Zathric have a central command ship. If we destroy it, we could cripple their entire war effort. But their defenses are unlike anything we've faced before. This will be our ultimate test. Only by striking with everything we have can we hope to succeed." Alex took a deep breath, weighing the options in his mind. They were already stretched thin. Their resources were nearly depleted, and they had just lost valuable members of their team. But the Zathric weren't going to stop. If they didn't take the fight to the heart of the enemy, they might lose everything. "How do we get there?" Alex asked, his voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. "There is an underground tunnel network," Karish explained. "It leads directly to the heart of their command center, but it is heavily guarded. We'll have to infiltrate, bypass their defenses, and plant the charges. Once we destroy their command ship, we cripple their leadership. Without it, the Zathric will fall into disarray." The plan was simple enough, but the dangers were overwhelming. The tunnel system was vast, and the Zathric were everywhere. To reach the command center meant going deeper into enemy territory than any of them had ever dared. And once they planted the explosives, they would have to escape without being caught. "This will be our final strike," Karish continued. "We have one shot. There will be no retreat." Alex stared into the fire, his mind swirling with the weight of what Karish was saying. This wasn't just a battle. This was the ultimate test, the moment that would determine the future of both human and Erithari species. "All right," Alex said, his voice firm, as the decision settled into him like the weight of 1,000 lives. "We'll do it." The rest of the team gathered around, listening to the plan. They were battered, exhausted, and they knew what was at stake, but there was no turning back now. They had to win. They had to fight, and more than anything, they had to survive. Over the next few hours, they prepared for the final push. The team worked tirelessly, double-checking their weapons and ensuring that everything they needed was packed. Every minute was precious, and as the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, Alex knew that this would be the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. "We move out in 10 minutes, Karish said, his voice hard with resolve. "Stick to the plan. We will not fail." Alex stood up, looking over his team one last time. Their faces were filled with determination, but there was something else in their eyes. Fear of what they might face. Fear of what they might lose. But there was also something else. Hope. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for the future of two worlds. This was it. The ultimate test. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, had led to this moment. There was no turning back. Victory and beyond. The silence that followed the explosion was deafening. Alex turned to look at his team. They were battered, bruised, and exhausted, but they were alive. Against all odds, they had succeeded. The explosions they had planted had torn through the heart of the Zathric war machine. The shockwaves had destroyed key infrastructure, crippling their ability to fight back. For the first time, Alex saw hope in their eyes, the first sign that their sacrifice hadn't been in vain. Karish stood beside him, his expression unreadable, but the faintest glimmer of relief in his eyes betrayed his stoic demeanor. The Erithari warrior had fought beside them through every battle, every moment of hardship, but even Karish couldn't hide the weight of the victory from his face. "We did it," Alex whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Karish nodded slowly. "Yes, but this battle was only one part of a much larger war." As the team gathered around, catching their breath and checking their wounds, Alex realized the truth in Karish's words. The Zathric were far from defeated. This victory was crucial, but it didn't end the war. It gave them a chance, a real chance to push back, to reclaim their world and the worlds of their allies. But the war would continue. The Zathric were relentless, and the road ahead would not be easy. They moved quickly, taking stock of their situation. The mission was far from over. The Zathric would regroup, reorganize, and strike back. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Alex could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Their enemy had been dealt a crippling blow, and they had earned a moment of respite. But only a moment. Alex's mind drifted to the fallen comrades, the soldiers who hadn't made it. Each one had given their life for this mission, and their sacrifice would never be forgotten. It was a heavy burden, but it was one that Alex carried with a sense of honor. They had all fought for something greater than themselves, for the survival of humanity and the Erithari, for the hope of peace in a galaxy torn apart by war. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft light over the battlefield, Karish approached Alex. He held out his hand, a gesture of respect. Alex hesitated for a moment, then grasped it firmly. There were no words needed between them. They had forged a bond stronger than any weapon, stronger than any army. "We will rebuild," Karish said quietly, his voice filled with the weight of the future. "We will fight together until the last of the Zathric are defeated." Alex nodded. Together. The team gathered around, their faces weary but resolute. They knew the war wasn't over. They knew there would be more battles, more sacrifices, but for the first time, they had hope. They had proven that humanity and the Erithari could stand united against the greatest threat their worlds had ever known. As they prepared to leave the ruins of the Zathric Command Center, Alex looked out over the landscape. The road ahead was uncertain, but there was no turning back. They would face whatever came next with the strength they had earned, with the allies they had gained, and with the bond they had forged. This was only the beginning. The war for their future was far from over, but they had shown the galaxy one undeniable truth. Humanity and the Erithari were a force to be reckoned with, and together they would win. The horizon stretched before them, full of possibilities, but no matter what lay ahead, they would face it as one. The alliance had been forged, the future secured, and the war was theirs to finish.